Hi, this is Patrick here, and I wanted to talk about some of my favorite spots in Sevilla. It's a city that's captured the interest of people for hundreds of years. It's ancient, it is so beautiful, and there's truly just so much to see throughout. So I've kind of condensed it mostly to areas that are downtown, that are really close to one another, that kind of be just your bare essential crash course must-see spots in Sevilla. So the first place in Sevilla that I wanted to highlight that's probably just hands down my favorite spot is the Parque Maria Luisa. It is just this incredible, winding, majestic park in the middle of their downtown ancient city. It's obviously a lot more developed than a park, like a national park that you would see in the United States, but it's still absolutely beautiful, and it's so densely covered with trees that you can kind of walk through and keep discovering all these different places in it. So, for example, one time while I was there, I saw this reflecting pool, and then there's also a lot of interesting buildings that are connected to it as well. So within this enormous park, here is a museum of art, and here is a different museum, which is of history. Right now is the view from the Sevilla Aquarium, which is also part of Parque Maria Luisa. And finally, here is a picture of a jellyfish from inside of the aquarium. So the Parque Maria Luisa just has so much to see. It's so beautiful, and the weather in Sevilla is just so lovely pretty much all the time. I would definitely recommend stopping by there. The second place that I wanted to talk about in Sevilla is the Real Alcázar. This is an alcázar built by King Pedro I, and I don't have very many pictures, but it is just another absolutely gorgeous place. It has a lot of Muslim architecture, and it's really just unlike anything that you would be able to see in the United States. For any Game of Thrones fans, also, this was used as Dorne, as the palace in Dorne, which I thought was very interesting as well. And unfortunately, I only got to go to the Real Alcázar once. I was planning on going there again before I had to leave from Sevilla, but the only reason that it wasn't one of my favorite parts is just because it is somewhere that you have to pay to get into. The third place in Sevilla that I wanted to talk about is maybe the most famous. It's the Plaza de España, and it was built around 1950 as an embassy for Spain, and now it is actually just used as kind of a giant glorified office building. Different companies can rent out spaces inside, but also it attracts a huge amount of tourists just because it is so beautiful. I mean, there's so much intricate tile work and design, carving in the architecture. It's truly difficult to describe. And the Plaza de España is actually connected to the Parque Maria Luisa, so it's very easy and convenient to see both of them at the same time. And although it is one of the more touristy spots in Sevilla, I think it's absolutely deserving of it and always open to the public, so it's just a pretty phenomenal place to go and see. So I will admit that this next place is actually a little bit outside of Sevilla. It's maybe a 15 or 20 minute drive, but it absolutely blew my mind. It's called Italica, and it is some very well preserved Roman ruins. So this is actually inside of an arena there. There are also 2 Roman emperors that were actually born in Sevilla, and here's a bust of one of them. There's also some beautiful mosaics that are very, very well preserved and that you can see. And Rome in Spain is not really something that I had thought about very much before. I did write a blog post about that, but getting the opportunity to go and see those ruins was absolutely incredible, and I would highly recommend it. The penultimate place that I wanted to talk about in Sevilla is the Catedral de Sevilla, which is the third largest cathedral in the world that is actually built on top of a mosque that was partially destroyed during the reconquest of Spain. So it is so large that none of my pictures can even get the scope of this building, and whether you identify as a religious person or not, it is incredibly humbling to even walk by it on the streets. It's so funny. All of the locals walk by without really looking twice, but I could just stare at it in awe. But inside and out, once again, just the architecture is so detailed, so immaculate, and as kind of a wonder of the world, I would absolutely recommend that you go and see it. And finally, I wanted to talk about the Setas de Sevilla. They are by far the newest entry on this list, and they were actually a little bit controversial when they were introduced to the city because of what a strange and otherworldly design that they have. And they're made entirely out of wood, and this was a German design that won a contest of a new public art feature in Sevilla. One of the very cool things about the Setas is that you can actually enter them and climb up to the top and get some large views of the city. One of my biggest regrets is that I didn't get to do that while I was in Sevilla. I was waiting to do it and just didn't, want to pay for it at the moment. So hopefully at some point I'll be able to go back and get a little bit more of a panoramic of the city. But they're very popular, very interesting, and although they look so strange, somehow they fit within the city. So those were a few of my favorite spots in Sevilla. I know that I did some writing about how it was a little strange to be living in a city, but it really is filled with so much natural and man-made beauty, and I'm so grateful that I got to spend some of my time there while studying abroad. It really is one of the most beautiful places in the world and is a must-see location in Spain. So I wanted to highlight just a few of my favorite parts that I got to spend some time in while I was there, and hopefully at some point I can revisit and get a more in-depth look at the city as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.